CJ Stroud spoke with the media as the Texans started their OTAs ahead of the NFL draft, and he's asked a bunch of good things. I've got my favorite responses here. First up, what does he expect out of this new offense and new offensive coordinator, Nick Caley?
Yeah. I mean, he comes from LA and New England, and he's gonna bring some of that swag over here. So, that kind of is what I'm used to is taking control and you know being a little more pre-snap. Having tools to put my guys in the best position, and that's something that we really didn't work on these last 2 years. But even those principles I learned from, and it made me better because it added a new element to my game. So, be able to just get better and learn from what he did with New England and LA would definitely help me because I feel those are two schemes that I'm kind of used to in a sense. Like that's kind of what I ran in at Ohio State, what kind of New Orleans does a little bit, and in LA, it's kind of what we ran here these last 2 years. So I'll be able to put my swag on it and have fun with it. And he's all about me taking full ownership and running the show, and that's what I want. So I'm gonna get what I want, and that's really been really cool just to see that he's like bought into me, and he doesn't really know me well yet. So he talked about today having blind trust, and I have a lot of trust in him already. Just how he talks and how he presents in the room and things like that is really cool to see.
Okay, I know that's music to a lot of people's ears. The pre-snap, not something we really addressed or worked on in the last couple of years. And CJ is now in his third year. That's usually the year where you do start to hope your quarterback can handle a lot more pre-snap, identifying blitzes, changing the pass protection, having more of the playbook at your command when you want to audibilize, whereas the Texans have been the more primitive, just check the direction of the run, check from pass to a pre-called run play, all that stuff. CJ being way more involved, hopefully, is a really, really good thing. There will be some hiccups along the way because it's just like driving stick. You don't just start it and know how to do it and then be able to do it on a racetrack. But he has 100%, 110%. I'll go football coach mode here. He is 100% capable of that. And I'm just glad that he's with an offensive coordinator that's going to fully entrust and explore that and hopefully just keep feeding him to get to the point where CJ pre-snap can help out the offensive line instead of hoping that your young center is going to make the right call, hoping that the tackles actually hear the call. Yes, run the show, CJ. Matt Stafford, Tom Brady, not bad. Those guys have had some success doing these things that Nick Caley has seen and worked with. So yes. What have conversations been like between you and Nick Caley?
I mean, they're very, at first it was just introduction. Now we're starting to get in the scheme of things, but, there's more like filling each other out as people, seeing where he comes from, being from Canton, not far from Columbus where I played ball in college. And there's a lot of similarities when it comes to just like family, just how much we love our families and how much we love ball. And, he's very personable, very somebody that I've found respect for already just on how he approaches the game, how much he loves it. So, just very introductional, but also as we've come into, OTAs and we've been able to get on the phone a couple of times and talk about certain things, which has been nice. So.
Getting on the phone a couple times. That's the interesting part too, because we heard D'Amico talk in his press conference about how, coaches aren't allowed out on the field and they have to be together in meetings and everything. And it's a tricky dynamic because the Players Association has been very forceful over the past decade in trying to create clearer boundaries about the offseason. But then there are a lot of players that just want more, and please educate me, tell me. So the conversations between players and coaches, I think, I don't even want to speak anymore on it. I think some players who seek out information have ways of seeking out information. You're in the position right now where you'd like CJ to basically have the entire playbook and be working with Nick Caley for 4 hours a day on it. They don't allow that. So you got to figure out ways to kind of almost have prison communication, Okay, Caley's only allowed to talk to CJ for so long. So how much information can I squeeze into this little square of toilet paper and feed it to him? And hopefully he gets the message and busts out of last year's prison. Because that's what it was. It was the Bobby Slowick prison, damn it. Next up, CJ was asked about new wide receiver Christian Kirk, acquired via trade with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, I'm excited, to be able to play against him. Last 2 years, he's, somebody that, you definitely got to prepare for if you're playing against him now. It's the other side where, we get to work together, somebody who I've heard amazing things. Mikado being from Texas A&M, and being with him there, saying that he's a great person. That's all I've seen. Being on the phone with him, texting him. Now meeting him in person for the first time, other than being opponents. But yeah, man, he brings a tenacity, a raw ability just to run routes, feel the game, run after catch. And just I think he's a very polished route runner and a leader, which is something that I'm very excited to work with him about.
Yes, quick game. We saw CJ's numbers erode after Stephon Diggs went out, and going back and watching how many times CJ was able to get it to Stephon Diggs early in the down, in tight windows, all of those things. I'm not going to sit here and say that Christian Kirk's ceiling is as high as Stephon Diggs' ceiling was. I do think that in a better run and executed offense, that there will be more opportunities for run after catch. I think that was probably the most disappointing thing. Well, there were multiple disappointing things with the offense last year, but I don't think Stephon Diggs necessarily had as much room to run after the catch because teams were playing shell coverages, because nobody respected the Texans' run game. You could get the ball to Diggs, but Diggs didn't have a lot of room to roam afterwards. I think the physical ability was still there. So hopefully Christian Kirk, even though the upside and the top tier physical skills might not be there like it with Stephon Diggs, he might just flat out have more opportunities. Hopefully. Were you surprised by all the changes up front, the offensive line, and were they needed?
I mean, that's something I feel, is not my pay grade. It's just I'm just a quarterback, but at the same time, it's you build relationships with guys, and your LT, of course, who I know you're talking about, and Shaq. Those are two of my best friends, so that I've come into the league with. So yeah, it hurts. You know what I mean? And our front office knows that, and they know how I felt about it, and but I totally understand, and I'm not against it at all. I totally think that we're heading to the right side of things. And I think something I learned about Nick is that he has a plan. No matter what happens, he always has something up his sleeve. So of course, sometimes we don't know what that is, and but you just have that trust, and that's something that we actually talked about today, having blind trust and having earned trust. And for Nick, I mean, he's gained my trust in both areas. So I'm excited, but I'm always going to be best friends with those guys and rooting them on, and I still talk to them daily. So.
All right. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Conspicuously absent from that conversation was Kenyon Green. I have zero. I don't know. Maybe just forgot. But loves Shaq Mason, loves Laremy Tunsil, and CJ's learned this by now. I think those are two notable names and guys that have been starters since CJ's been here. But guys are going to get traded away. Guys are going to get cut. Guys are going to retire. Guys are going to get injured, and he's a veteran quarterback now. He knows and understands that. I do wonder, perhaps what the conversation with CJ was, and the way they phrased it with Laremy sounds like they said, "Hey, we've got to pay a lot of guys. We got guys upcoming that we have to pay," and that does make sense on paper, and it does make logical sense, and yet it's very, very, very rare for teams to let go of a guy that's a premier pass protector at left tackle. So there was almost logically more to it without diving in any rumors or anything like that. And I just wonder if they had a conversation with CJ at all about whether perhaps it had also to do with some culture things.
What's different for you, if anything, going into this offseason in preparation than your first 2 years?
This is experience, just more like more games on my belt, not only games, but just like an off season, free time, OTAs, drafting, like draft schedule, things like that. Just comfortability with those type of things. So that's been the most, probably the best thing, is just being used to like how things go, trades and all type of stuff. So it's nothing you get comfortable with completely, but you find comfort in it more as you get more experience, I feel.
I'm glad he brought that up, because it's true. So you have your rookie year where everything's a whirlwind, and you're doing pro days, you're doing the draft, you're doing mini camps, everything's new, and you're trying to find a place to live, all of that. It's a blur. Then your first off season that CJ went through last year, that's the first time in your life really as an athlete that you have all this free time on your hands. And CJ has alluded a little bit at the end of last season. He alluded to kind of maybe handling it differently. And I don't think he was out of control or anything, but you do have to go into the offseason with a plan. And sometimes you can't quite, you don't know what you don't know as you're realizing that you have wide swaths of open time, and how do you organize your workouts and getting everything that you want to do in, and also, avoid the old idle hands or the devil's temptation or whatever. Idle hands are the devil's workshop. Avoiding that whole dynamic. It's a tough time for a young man whose veins are coursing with testosterone.